I still don't know how to transition between scenes. So this is Zach's cue to try and edit this and blend it and make it look normal. But one of the things you need to check after having machine work done to an engine is lift or preload. It needs to be between 20 and 80 thousandths of an inch. That might vary based on cam manufacturer. Most of them are 20 to 80. The way they typically tell you to do this is preload it, so torque your rocker arms. In this case, it's 24 foot-pounds or something along those lines. Roll the motor over a few times, make sure you've actually squished all the oil out. These are brand new lifters. They collapse pretty easily because they're obviously not pumped up. You'll see, if you put a dial indicator on it, you'll see it move as it's squishing the oil out, getting rid of the slack adjustment in it. But typically what they say to do is torque your rockers, roll the motor over 1 or 2 times, use the valve cover mating surface as an indication of where this push rod is. So you scribe it with like a lathe cutting tool, which is what I did, which you can't see on this, but you'll scribe it, loosen the rocker, let it come all the way back up and scribe it again. The problem you run into with big block Fords is they're canted valve heads, so the push rod isn't actually square to the valve cover rail. So the other way you can do it is with a dial indicator, same thing. Torque the rockers down, roll it over a couple times, put the dial indicator in line in on top of the push rod and loosen that rocker, and it'll wiggle a little bit and it'll be hard to read. It's kind of a pain. I actually took a carbide drill and drilled a spot for this one to sit in, because I also don't do it this way either because it's a pain. You have this little tab that deflects oil out of the push rod hole into the fulcrum of the rocker, because these are stock stamped rockers. So I'll try and zoom in on it for the rest of it, but the way I typically do it is I'll just take my ratchet, go to 0 lash, which I'll show you in a second, go to 0 lash, and then, so I don't like that either. I typically take a ratchet, run it down to 0 lash, which like I said, I'll show you in a second. And if you want to do the math on it, going from class 1 lever with a 1:7:3 ratio to a class 2 lever, where this is now the stable point, this is your force and that's your load, you can figure out the ratio of what this rocker will be and then use your thread pitch as your multiplier for how far down this goes. So I know it's a 5/16 18 bolt, so I already know this travels 56 thousandths for each rotation. And I also know that the ratio of this bolt pushing on that push rod is 1.57 something. I'll have to look at my notes. But basically a quarter turn to slightly less than 1 full turn will get you your 20 to 80 thousandths preload, and you can just run through and turn the engine over 90 degrees and go in firing order to check your preload. If you read the instructions that come with your cam, it'll typically tell you that you only need to check 1 intake and 1 exhaust. I don't agree with that. That's just sloppy, it's lazy. It's easy to check all your rockers. Check them all. Don't check one. Go through. It's like lashing. It is lashing valves, but do it like you're lashing a solid cam and check all of them. Don't check one. So I'll go through. I'll crack this one free. I'll try not to hit the dial indicator. I'm going to refocus the camera so you can actually read that. Then I'll go back through and then lash it the way I do it. So we'll see if I can zoom in on it and get it to focus. All right, that seems pretty focused for now until I step in here. I'm probably going to bump this when I try and loosen it. But like I said, I drilled this rocker, so there's a little bit of an indentation. So I'll try and crack it free, and then you'll see it start to load, which 24 foot-pounds of the 3/8 ratchet when you're trying not to smack something is not the greatest. So it moved a little bit. As soon as I get it free, I'll pull that off and bumped it a little bit. So this has about 66 thousandths preload. That's skewed a little bit because as this comes up, this is traveling in a straight line and this is traveling in an arc. So it ran up on that lip a little bit. It's better if you have a rocker. Some of these rockers come with a hole for the push rod, so you can put it right down in the hole. I just wouldn't do it this way. All right, so the rocker's still backed off. So you can see the push rod moves up and down. So set it like you're lashing adjustable valves. So wiggle it up and down until you feel it actually seat on there and you feel some drag when you roll it, which I have to be real careful not to preload this too hard because there is no oil in these lifters. So as soon as I feel it start to tighten up, I have to stop. So I know that 0.91 turns is 80 thousandths of preload. So I'll start with the ratchet straight up and down, roll it over, and as soon as it stops, I know that's under 80 thousandths. And I can go through and do every single cylinder in about 15 minutes. It's a lot faster. I know it's accurate. I just checked it. And unless your threads are cut weird, but you can do the same thing on any engine as long as you can figure out what the ratio from the valve to the push rod is in relation to your rocker stud. So, easy thing to do, check all your valves, don't run it without it. I'm gonna finish this up and put the intake on. Okay, before I actually start checking lifter preload, if you buy an aftermarket balancer, leave the engine at top dead center when you take the degree wheel off and finish assembling the motor without rolling it over, or at least putting the timing cover on and stuff, so you can check to see how close your new balancer is with your factory timing pointer. This one's 4 degrees retarded right now, so that's real bad. Timing is typically just an arbitrary number if you have access to a dyno or a drag strip where you can actually check to see what your timing adjustments do. If you're just going off the seat of your pants, you really need to have a good idea of what you're doing. Otherwise, go off things other people have already done and proven. Don't just try and guess on timing. 4 degrees off is a substantial amount. If this is 4 degrees the other way and you're gonna try and do a pump gas motor or even like a boosted motor, on pump gas, you could run into huge issues with 4 degrees the other way. And this just so happened to be 4 degrees retarded, which would be detrimental to power. But check your frickin' balancers and your timing pointers. That's a problem. But like I said, as far as I'm concerned, having access to a dyno, timing is just, the number is an arbitrary number. It doesn't really matter. I'm gonna creep up on timing, see where best power's at, and then I'll pull 1 degree per pound to boost. So it doesn't necessarily affect me. It actually works out better because this timing for this balancer is only marked to 30 degrees. So now it's marked out to 34. So I only have to go 2 degrees past that because best power is probably gonna be about 36. But I figured I'd throw that in there before I started turning the motor over. All right, I skipped putting the intake on because it's pretty straightforward. You put the studs in, you struggle bust with that thing unless you put the water pump on after like you should, but I wanted to paint the water pump the same color as the engine to make it look mostly factory. So these come with your gasket kit. These go on the ends of the intake. Throw them straight in the trash and buy a tube of silicone and silicone that seal. If you build any crankcase pressure at all, these will fail. They have come a long ways. They're a lot better than the cork ones that they used to have. Like this goes into the actual intake gasket and those go into the actual block. They still suck. Any crankcase pressure at all and you'll blow these things out, especially if you have any variance in the height of the intake off that wall of the block. These will fail. Do not use these. Silicone it, let it sit, torque your manifold, torque it again, and don't try and start it until it's been at least 24 hours to let that set up. Throw those away.